Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Atikokan Committee of the Whole agenda for September 22nd, 2025, starting at 4:29. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, we'll call for a disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. You can claim it now or any time throughout the meeting. Councillor Lyons. Yeah, right. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, this evening we have 3 delegations. At this time, I'd like to call on Ian Laplante, the Community Relations Supervisor for Agnico Mines at the Hammond Reef project, to give us an update. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you so much, and thanks for making time to squeezing me in. I promise I will not take more more time than I need. I'll just I have a lot of slides, but I'm just going to give a high overview. I just wanted to make sure that I kind of explain why you may have noticed an increased presence of Agnico Eagle in the town, and what we're hoping to do moving forward, and how Agnico Eagle and Atikokan can kind of work together on this project. So the first slide I really only included in this presentation to kind of give a sense of all of the scope of Agnico Eagle's work. So Agnico Eagle is Canada's largest gold producer. We're the second largest in the world, and we have operations in Canada, Mexico, Finland, and Australia. Um, and I only bring this up to say that when our Ontario region is really advocating for a project, we're oftentimes sort of competing internally for the attention of our shareholders, to basically say, like, this is a project that we really believe in, and this is a project that we think demands attention and has real potential. But again, it's a global company with a lot of operations. One of the rules that Agnico Eagle has is that they really only want to operate where they believe they have a strong social license to operate, which means that the communities want them there. We don't want to sort of impose ourselves in areas where our operations just are not within the priorities of the communities. And as part of that mission, we have a detailed sustainability commitment. I'm not going to run through all of it here, but the key piece that I wanted to highlight is sort of that respect for communities. So the reason why we have a community relations department in Ontario that is ever growing is because this is a huge point of priority for us. We want to make sure that we are engaging with communities, municipalities, NGOs, and of course, Indigenous partners. For those who are not aware of the Hammond Reef project, I'm just going to give a really quick overview. So it's located roughly 50 kilometers by road, rough gravel road, of Atikokan. It was previously owned by Osisko. Then it was owned by the Canadian Malartic Corporation. That started in about 2014. And in 2018, Agnico Eagle took over full ownership of the project. It underwent a full environmental assessment, both provincial and federal. It is an open pit project. So if it were to go into become an operating mine, the plan would be for an open pit. There are two, the east and the west pit, which you can see on this kind of preliminary site map. And there would be an estimated workforce. This was the last time they sort of estimated it at the time of the assessment, was estimated to be around 635 persons. likely with accommodation camp at site, require a transmission line and all-weather access road upgrade. Because like I said, we have that 50-kilometer gravel road, but right now it's very seasonal. Uh, as I had mentioned, it went through both a federal and provincial environmental assessment. Um, the federal decision was 2018, the provincial one was 2019. That ended with a series of commitments, so 173 commitments that if the project were to move forward and become an operating mine in production, all 173 of those commitments would need to be met. Um, before a even before a mine could open, there's about 30 other permits, and many of those would actually need to be obtained before we even were to go into production. So we've done the full assessment. We have a good sense of the commitments, but uh, there are a number of outstanding permits that would need to be obtained before, we were to put a shovel in the ground and say that, construction is would, is imminent. Uh, for these and other reasons, the project is still, as of September 2025, in care and maintenance. What that means is that the project is sort of indefinitely on hold. Um, the short version of why is there were incomplete results from a feasibility study to sort of determine if the this operating mine were a feasible investment for Agnico Eagle. Um, when the project was put on hold in 2019, there was, after that point, some internal studies to try and optimize the project. That meant that there were some of the original design, there were changes. So there was a relocation of a camp, relocation of a plant. There were some changes to the tailings management. There was a reduction in the mining rate to increase the life of mine. So it's sort of mining less to let it extend for a longer period. Um, but again, and as 2023 sort of wound down, there wasn't really enough information in those updated optimizations to sort of convince the company to, bring this project back online. So it was still in care and maintenance. Why I'm coming to you in 2025 and why we have more folks on the ground in Atikokan and more regionally is because we have been, for a number of reasons, some internal, some external, reassessing the project's feasibility. And this means that we are reviewing the project's concept. We are doing field investigations. We are doing some regional field work, which I'll talk to a little bit. We are looking at some of the design. Um, Basically, to put it simply, the company is looking at every aspect of the project to see if the opinion of the project's feasibility in 2025 is different than it was at the time that we went into care and maintenance. So as I mentioned, the result of that is more people on the ground to help us gather information. So in 2024, they restarted field work in the region. This map, the little green dots show where field work was conducted. The big gold star, as I'm sure you can guess, is the Hammond Reef project site. So as you can see, they weren't just looking at the site, they were conducting field work in a more regional um, view. This is because the idea here is to imagine not just the sort of the outlook for the Hammond Reef project as a mine, but is there regional potential that can help kind of bolster that argument that this is a project worth sort of investing in and the mill is worth investing in. So in 2024, we had 4 field workers. In 2025, as you can see, a lot more field work conducted at a regional level. And because of that, we had 15 workers. I think we had 12 on the ground and 3 that were kind of floating in our regional offices. This included airborne geophysics. It also included maintenance and upgrades to the existing infrastructure. So, for example, the road was in pretty serious disrepair. And so we uh, invested in getting that road fixed up so we could get out to site. There are some camp facilities on site that had kind of fallen into disrepair, and so we went out and no, I say we, I didn't do the I didn't do it, but um, uh, better people than I went out and they cleaned up the site and they looked into the camps and uh, are starting to sort of price out costs for getting at least some of the accommodations out there in a more working order. And this applies to a number of different aspects. We had just when the project was back in 2023, the last time that a decision was made to kind of leave the project on hold, um, everything was just kind of left. And so now we're coming back 2 years later and trying to make sure that we're not sort of leaving things like that and cleaning things up and really sort of fixing up the infrastructure out there. Um, it also meant that in 2025 we for the first time in a long time had a dedicated community relations focus on this. So this meant that my role on the community relations team, we have a manager of community relations, Nathan Snyder. Under him, we have two supervisors. One is me, and I look after the projects, so Upper Beaver and Hammond Reef. And my counterpart is Jess Corsten, who looks after our operating mines, Detour Lake and Macassa. Um, and one of the first tasks that was sort of put on my plate was to hire a community relations coordinator for the project. We're still on the hunt for a community relations coordinator for the project, but that is something that the company has committed to, and it's something that it's top of my list of priorities. I really want someone in that role sooner rather than later. Right now, I'm the sort of the next best thing, the direct point of contact for communities. But ideally, when we have an actual coordinator on the ground, they can attend a lot of the events that I can't in person, just based on geography, um, and also probably do a much better job of keeping everyone updated and participating and feeling like everyone's voices are heard. This also meant that we were reestablishing our relationship with communities, which is part of that was speaking to the town of Atikokan for the first time in a long time. Part of it was speaking to our First Nation and Métis partners, um, and sort of seeing where the relationship had been left and where we can improve it moving forward. And it also meant, at least it meant to our team, sort of really putting a focus on community contributions, making sure that we were seeking out opportunities where Agnico Eagle could help. And so it started off with a couple donations to the two elementary schools in Atikokan, and then from there it's just been um, whenever anyone's sort of asking for something, I always say, I point folks in the direction of our donations committee, but I sit on the donations committee, so I have at least one extra voice that's advocating for um, both Atikokan as a town and the region more broadly, and making sure that Agnico Eagle is um, directing their investments in northwestern Ontario as well as northeast. Um, and so that's sort of all I had. The short version is we're here. We are doing a lot of work in the town. You've probably noticed our trucks. You've certainly probably noticed our folks in the community. Um, there is no, at this time, substantial change in how Agnico Eagle is viewing the Hammond Reef project. We are still in care and maintenance, but it's a project that uh, the permitting and community relations and explorations folks in the Ontario region really believe in. And so we are doing what we can to advocate for the project. Um, I'm sure the next question would probably be what timeline we're looking at when things might change. Um, we have internal discussions in November that there's sort of a series of internal kind of hurdles that we kind of passed. The next hurdle is November, and that's when we sort of go back to the corporate team with a summary of what have we learned over the last year of refocusing on the project and getting hopefully a green light to continue sort of expanding our attempt to sort of reassess feasibility for the project. Um, the next checkpoint hurdle after that is probably late first quarter 2026. That's when we're hoping to make a case a little bit more broadly with a little bit more details. So because of that, we're trying to move some permits forward by the end of the year just to see how that is going so that we can report back and say this is where, community relations sees the project. This is how we feel communities are responding to it. The permitting team can say their piece, the exploration team can say their piece, and hopefully we can continue to sort of advocate for this project internally, um, and just make sure that it kind of doesn't fall off everyone's radar. But regardless, even if we continue in the short term in this sort of care and maintenance holding pattern, um, the commitment that the Ontario team has is that we're not going to suddenly drop off the map. uh, that we have uh, a dedicated staff that's going to continue to look after our responsibilities here. Um, that we're going to continue to engage um, as often as we can with updates so that if uh, folks in the community of Atikokan have questions about what's going on with Hammond Reef, why am I seeing an Agnico Eagle person at the gas station or the grocery store, you have an answer. Um, and it may not be like a popping champagne bottles type of answer, but you at least will know what we're doing and what our plan is, and know that it's not just sort of a forgotten project. So that's all I had. In the short term, in the slide deck, I have my email address. It's just ian.laplante@agnicoeagle.com. Feel free to email me anytime. I can if I don't have the answer to whatever your question is, whether it's about community contributions or permitting or some sort of environmental piece, an infrastructure piece, something about contracting or business opportunities, even if I don't have the answer, I will be able to direct you to the right person. And I also have my number there as well. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Ian. Thank you, Ian. Before I turn it over for questions, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of council and also to the community, people that you have donated to. I'm sure it's very much appreciated and goes a long way and helps everybody out there. So at this time, I'd like to see if there's any questions from anybody. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you, Acting Chair Shine. A comment and a question. I would just thank you, Ian, for your financial commitment to all the volunteer events that your company has contributed to. It went a long way to help put these events on. And also for the young group that you had working in Atikokan this summer. They volunteered many, many hours to help put those events on. And for me and other volunteers, it goes a long way in establishing a very good work partnership with Agnico and Atikokan. And on behalf of the people, I want to thank you and appreciate that very much. My question is, quite a few years ago, Cisco had a public meeting at the Legion, and they said that they could make that mine feasible at $1,800 an ounce. And now with gold almost doubling, what has changed, or is it just in the companies?
The short answer is I don't have the full picture on um, what would drive a full decision for the company um, to determine that the project is feasible. The thing is, we know there is gold there. We know the gold price has never been higher. What we try to do as a company is not make decisions based off of, a current high rate, because the reality is in 2025, like the gold price is incredible. Um, it takes a few years for a mine to become operational if we were to put a shovel in the ground. And we want to make sure that we are not, you know, investing in an operation that the company would then say, "Oh, the gold price isn't high enough anymore," and then they just walk away. So we take a more conservative approach and imagine a lower price when we make these type of decisions. Um, there are a number of things at play. Every company sort of makes these decisions in slightly different ways. Every company sort of invests uh, differently. So I'm not 100% sure how Cisco came to that particular number. And I'm also not, to be honest, entirely sure what if there is kind of a threshold number for Agnico. It's a large global company, and they are looking at there are multiple regions in sort of the global portfolio that are saying, "Hey, I have this project that you put in care and maintenance a few years ago, and it's really worth reinvesting in." We're sort of competing internally with a lot of different regions, and so this is Ontario's project. This is the project that we are advocating for, but there are other regions. We have, Quebec, Nunavut, Finland, Australia, Mexico. Every region kind of has their dream projects, and so um, the the decision that drives sort of where the investment really goes, is way beyond my pay grade. But I promise that what we're doing in Ontario right now is trying to build a really robust case from every angle: community relations, permitting, exploration, for why we think this project is a truly feasible investment. Um, Despite the sort of short life of mine that was originally projected. So, sort of a long non-answer. I'm sorry.
No, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Once again, we'd like to say,
Oh,
I was
Gord.
just waiting my turn, Chair. Thank you. Ian, through the chair, it's great to see you again.
Yeah.
It's more of I've got a question or a comment and then a question. I've been lucky enough to spend some time with the Agnico Eagle people this summer, and I can tell you that they do things very, very well. Safety is paramount, environment is paramount. So, it's really impressive. And one of the things that I asked them in a meeting we had was, with the change of government and the province saying we can fast track things and cut red tape, and I said, does that help you guys? And their answer was no, because that's not how we do business. We don't take shortcuts. We don't look for favors. We do things the right way, and that really stuck with me. And that was back in, I don't know when that was, April or May, and that really stuck with me. Is that comment is no, they're not looking for favors from the government or shortcuts. They're going to do things the proper way. So kudos to you guys on that. And my question now is, you said you have a meeting in November, and community engagement, community involvement, community blessing for the project is very high. Is there anything that we can do as a council to help your case when you present it in November?
Thanks for the comment and the question. The the community relations pitch for the project, sort of, one element of it is just that this is a community that wants this project to move forward, that believes that this would be beneficial, because not every community feels that way for a number of reasons. Sometimes, the infrastructure demands would be too high. Sometimes it's just the environmental concerns and the concerns of cottagers. We hear all sorts of very valid concerns. But if we had, if council saw fit to, for example, either draft a letter or a resolution saying, even in the short term, that there is sort of belief in the project, interest in at least this current exploration phase of the project, because I wouldn't feel comfortable asking anyone to sort of speak beyond the current phase of where we are, which is just exploration. Um, that would I think be helpful as part of a sort of robust argument we're hoping to make about um, the closest municipality not being opposed to this project continuing, because that's not necessarily a given. Um, and in this case, the way that Atikokan has um, really welcomed, particularly our exploration team on the ground, everyone that was here over the summer loved it. They felt so welcome. They felt so invited in. Um, that we share these sort of anecdotal stories all the time in our meetings, and that's part of the sort of the story that we're telling. But like a letter or a resolution from council would really also help, um, if there was interest in that. But
Just to follow up, Chair Shine. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, something like that, Ian. We're not going to go full-fledged, full hog and say, we're open to anything. But yeah, we are definitely open to furthering this exploration part too. So, I can't speak for all of council, but with council's blessing, I think that would be something that we'd be interested in. A letter of support saying, we'd like to see you continue.
yeah, and like I said, it's just one step at a time, right? We're really only looking at where our current, what current phase are we in, and this is exploration. And then we're hoping to be able at some point to advance to advanced exploration, but there are permits between here and there, and there are sort of internal debates and external conversations to be had between here and there. And so, yeah, anything in the short term that kind of um, helps us make the internal argument that the anecdotal stories that we have are representative of a fuller picture. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor Ferguson. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Shine. Thanks for the presentation, Ian. And thanks for not giving our community false hope for a mine. Nobody wants that. My question is, and I may have missed it, are you going to have boots on the ground at the site this winter, or are you going to wrap it up for fall and come back in spring?
We are going to have, I think we have 2 or 3 exploration folks that are staying over the course of the winter. I'm not 100% sure what they have on their portfolio, and I think they are hoping to maybe do a little bit, some sort of upgrades around the camp. But it'll be a much quieter group, smaller group over the winter, and then the plan is for things to pick back up in the spring, and then particularly in the summer, Agnico loves to sort of bring in summer students. It's a good opportunity for summer students to have some on the ground experience, and also for us to hopefully have some folks that we can eventually add to our team. And so we usually have our largest contingent over the summer when we can also bring in some summer students. Those are most of the people on the ground, a good number at least on the ground in Atikokan this past summer were summer students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Councillor Martin, for your comments. Any other questions or comments? Once again, thank you, Ian. We much appreciate you coming forward and giving us a very updated version of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And like I said, just don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, any concerns. Email me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need a minute, Sue? On to our second presentation, and I may not say the names right, so I'm sorry about that. Ines Canella from NRStor Incorporated Atikokan Battery Energy Storage System Project. Welcome, Ines.
All right, is this working? Testing, testing, great. All right. First of all, thank you for having us and putting us on the agenda. We're very excited to be here. I'm here today to talk to you about our proposed 200 megawatt battery project. And the name is a work in progress. We're working with our First Nations partners on some options, but this is what we have so far. So hopefully this will work. Let's go to give you a sense of what I'll cover today. I'd like to give you a bit of background to get you familiar with us a little bit, to know who we are, about energy storage in general, and the specific procurement that the Ontario government is doing right now, is undergoing right now, that is sort of providing the impetus for this project, and then telling you a little bit about the project itself and the benefits that it would bring, and then the next steps and why we're here today. So, in terms of the partners that have brought this project together, NRStor is, I'm with NRStor, and we are an energy storage developer. That is what we do. We build energy storage projects, whether they are compressed air energy storage, flywheels, batteries, whatever makes the most sense for the particular use case, and everything from the residential level in terms of residential batteries all the way up to utility scale, including our most recent 250 megawatt project, first of kind in Canada at Oneida, which I'll talk a little bit more about, that we did in partnership with AECON and Six Nations of the Grand River Development Corporation. So both NRStor and AECON have a very clear mandate to have to work with Indigenous communities, and in that particular project, AECON actually, they have a joint venture with Six Nations, A6N, that was involved in the construction as well. I'm sure you're all familiar with AECON. It's a very successful construction company with over 12,000 employees nationwide and a strong balance sheet. And we're also working closely with our Lac Milac First Nations partners. Unfortunately, Tony Manula, their director of strategy, wasn't able to attend today, but he wanted to be here, so he sends his regards. And as you're, I'm sure, very familiar, we're on Treaty 3 territory, and they've been caring for this land since time immemorial. So together, I think we'll build something, in the spirit of partnership. So, I believe most of you are pretty well versed in the energy space, so I might not spend too much time here in terms of what energy storage is, but essentially, like any battery that you use for your phone, your laptop, etc., we take electricity when it's not needed on the grid and then put it back on the grid when it's needed. So for instance, when the wind's blowing at night and we have a lot of extra generation from wind turbines, that we're not using, we could soak that up with batteries and then put it back on the grid during the peak times that we need during the day, for instance. That said, energy storage is useful no matter what type of generation is on the grid. It doesn't matter if it's nuclear or gas or anything, because it's essentially what it does is make the grid more efficient to help match demand and supply. And it can also provide a number of services to help power quality. It does a lot of good things for the grid in terms of frequency and voltage regulation, and operating reserve, and so basically being a backup power source, right? And it's modular and scalable, so that's how we can work, as I was saying before, with NRStor, everything from the residential battery unit at home all the way up to these mega projects. And that also helps drive costs down, like similar to how we saw in solar and wind previously, and because it's modular, it's something that's mass produced, in this case with batteries. With different storage technologies, that's not the case, but for this technology, we've been seeing the costs come down, which I don't think anyone would have a problem with. All right, on to environmental considerations. Like any project, this one would undergo the regular permitting process. The specific process that's used for energy storage in Ontario is the Class EA, which would follow the Ministry of Environment's guidelines, and this would be in the development phase post-bid award. The procurement that Ontario is doing right now is 600 megawatts, so it's very competitive, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But going through some of these items, some of the considerations are noise. The batteries themselves don't make any noise, like any other battery you've probably had experience with. It's actually the HVAC systems, the cooling systems, the fans that make noise. So we have to sort of take that into consideration and model it to see if there's an impact on the surrounding area, on the noise receptors in the surrounding area, excuse me. But we're able to achieve like 42 decibels at similar projects, which is very quiet, equivalent to like a quiet library or so on. And so the noise impact assessment would be part of that Class EA process that I was speaking about earlier. And in terms of siting, there's minimal wildlife disruption because we site our projects in industrial areas. So we're not encroaching on agricultural land. These are not very land-intensive projects. For instance, our 250 megawatt facility in Oneida, the final footprint of what was built was 7 acres. So they're very energy dense, and they're getting more energy dense actually on the market every day. So that's something to consider. And of course, we would do all of the species at risk studies and everything that we need to do to make sure that we're not having a negative impact, or that those impacts are mitigated and so on. And approximately 95% of lithium-ion batteries can be recycled into new batteries. There are a few startups in Canada that focus on recycling batteries. They don't have enough critical mass yet for a lot of their batteries, but that's also another related opportunity, I'd say. And I did want to address fire safety because this comes up as a question from folks when we propose projects. The first thing I'll say is that the battery chemistry matters. So the batteries that we have in our phones and our laptops are very energy dense, meaning they pack a punch, right? A very small battery can last a long time. They're NMC batteries, which is nickel, manganese, cobalt. In the utility space, those used to be used, but we've switched in the past several years to LFP, lithium iron phosphate, which is even safer and has a much higher threshold for what's called thermal runaway, essentially fire incidents and so on. And there are a lot of regulations and testing that go into these. Batteries must be tested, certified prior to use. There's no, in the event, heaven forbid, of a fire, there would not be any toxic gases or spills. And there are monitoring control systems in place to detect any abnormalities, because aside from not wanting an incident, of course, the operator will want to make sure that the batteries are operating at an optimal level. So monitoring is a big piece of the O&M. And there are also standards for minimum separation of battery units, so 3 meters from the edge, and it would all be fully contained in the site. So hopefully that addresses some concerns that might arise. I did want to give you sort of a case study of our Oneida energy storage project, because we're very proud of this, and it was recently commissioned. As I said, it was first of kind in Canada, and it was a partnership. So this was with Six Nations, the Grand River Development Corporation. There were 50-50 partners, worked with NRStor and Acon to bring this project to fruition. And it really demonstrates the benefits that energy storage can bring in terms of making the grid more efficient, and that results in making it more affordable for all of us ratepayers, because you're taking electricity that would otherwise be wasted and putting it back on the grid when it's needed. And so you have this project was on a similar scale. It's because it was a 4-hour duration and this one's 8 hours, this one is larger in a sense, but this gives you a sense of the magnitude of employment benefits and also CO2 emissions reductions, in that at certain times of year, especially, batteries would offset gas production for peak times. And at this point, with the supply constraints that Ontario has, we need pretty much every form of generation that we can on the grid during those really hot summer days. And I wanted to mention, because our partners, Acon, did an exemplary job with this project, and I really truly mean that. The project was ahead of schedule, was completed under budget, and with 0 lost time incidents. In fact, they just received a safety award for that. Because that, for a project of this magnitude, a large infrastructure project, that's really remarkable, which shows you sort of their dedication and their track record. Okay, so The ISO procurement, you may or may not be familiar with. They're doing a procurement for the energy stream, which will include renewables like wind and solar, and they're also doing the capacity stream. The capacity stream is the one we're in, where it would be obligated to have capacity available during certain hours of the day. So this is for 600 megawatts total. It would be a 20-year contract going until April 2050. And there are a few deadlines coming up. The first one is a project registration deadline, where we will submit to the ISOs sort of the project name and entity and so on, with just some of the high-level details so that they have a sense of how many bids they'll be receiving, so they can allocate resources appropriately. And then the actual proposal submission deadline is the 18th of December. And so we have that one circled on our calendars. And then the ISO hasn't given an exact date for notifying bidders of who was the selected proponents, but they say their target date is mid-June, June 16th, to be precise. So we believe that Atikokan is an especially good place to site one of these projects for a number of reasons. And I've pointed out two of them here, which is there are also rated criteria points included in this procurement. So the way that that works is it is based on price, and the lowest price sort of wins ultimately, but they will factor in points in a formula that makes your price lower, right? The evaluated price lower. So if you're in Northern Ontario, that's 3 additional points, so check. Right? And if the proponent, if we have an Indigenous participation level is equal to or more than 50%, which will be the case with Lac des Mille Lacs, then that's also putting us in a very competitive position. Add to that the fact that there's a lot of capacity on the high voltage transmission lines in the area, and that the community has been very welcoming and is very well versed in the energy space. So for all those reasons and more, that's why we're here. And there are a few requirements to be eligible to bid. The first one is, well, that we need land control in some capacity. So whether it's an option to lease, option to purchase, or if we own the site, we have to have some evidence of that before December 18th. And all projects will require a municipal support resolution. This can be in 2 forms. There's the specific municipal support resolution, where you have the detailed information about the project in terms of location, project size, and so on. Or there's the option of having the blanket MSR, which does not create any obligation. It sort of creates opportunity to say, we generally support any project that's in this LT2 procurement. And what happens is a confirmation letter is required from the CEO for specific details of specific projects that are sort of falling under that umbrella. And so the evidence that the ISO will need of municipal support is that blanket municipal support resolution, as well as the confirmation letter saying, so specifically this project at this size and so on. Without that confirmation letter, it's not valid. So yeah, it's kind of 2 pieces of one whole. All right. So I have a diagram here showing some of the municipal lands that we're looking at. Now, I say that the project size is up to 200 megawatts for a few reasons. The ISO gives us the option of having different laminations, so 3 different project sizes. So if your bid is competitive but there's not enough capacity left on the system, then they'll go to the next size. So say we bid 200, 150, 100, then they would go down the list. So that's why it's up to. This would be the maximum size, 8-hour duration. And we're looking, part of the reason why these lands are so well suited to this type of project is they're very accessible and very close to the Mackenzie transformer station. I think you might be able to see it there, sort of kitty corner to the easternmost municipal parcel there. And it's also close to to 2 230 kV lines, high voltage transmission lines, which each have 200 megawatts of capacity. So it's a great place to site a project, and those are immediately south of those parcels. And the land requirement, and we say the land requirement is approximately 20 acres. The actual, that's so that we have enough to work with to figure out what the actual buildable area is, because we have to take into account all of the setbacks from any, say, provincially significant wetlands or woodlots or what have you. So we want to make sure that we have enough to kind of work with. But the actual the footprint, as I said before, would be probably less than half of that ultimately, and we would need some for laydown area and so on, construction. And I think we've covered most of these other points in terms of the batteries and so on. So one thing that I haven't mentioned yet as one of the key reasons why we also really appreciate the opportunity to be here and why we're proposing a project in Atikokan is that we think it really aligns well with your willing host motion from earlier this year in terms of, I've just picked out a couple of key points that to me were quite salient in terms of how there's overlap, in terms of encouraging collaboration between industry, government, Indigenous communities, and local councils to ensure, that we have these energy projects and that are economically beneficial, not just in terms of job creation, but also in terms of affordability for ratepayers. Which is an important point. And it is, this is a sustainable technology in that it does enable the integration of renewable energy into the grid. It's emissions-free technology. So, and the other point, we already talked about affordability. So, and about system efficiencies. In terms of local and regional benefits, we'll have to do some more detailed analysis. This is probably an underestimate in terms of 300 person years of employment, because that was an example from our previous project, and as I said, this one's a different size. It does kind of depend on what the final picture looks like, but it gives you a sense of the order of magnitude. And of course, enabling Indigenous partnerships and economic reconciliation, which is our bread and butter, and unlocking the potential of Atikokan as a willing host community. So the next steps, as I mentioned, were that this project will require a municipal support resolution. The reason we haven't specified, we're still working through the due diligence of figuring out where the best location would be and project sizes that make the most sense in terms of where there's buildable area. So we think that at this point, a blanket municipal support resolution would make more sense. Again, it does not create any obligation. It's more of an opportunity to then allow projects to be supported in principle, and it would be confirmed with that letter that would be signed off by the CEO or at a later date. So other requirements will be, if these are on lands that are owned by the municipality, those will need to be declared surplus lands, and then entering into an option to lease agreement or option to purchase agreement, whatever is most appropriate. And that, hopefully, that was under 10 minutes. And I have my boss, the VP of Projects, Scott Matthews, here from NRStor to also answer any questions, as well as Manpreet Kaur from ACON.
Thank you, Ines. Are there any questions or comments at this time? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Shine. Will there be room for expansion? Are you going to build expansion into the project in the future?
Hi, I'm Scott Matthews. That's entirely possible, and we would like to plan for that. Like if we can have an area that's either on an adjacent parcel or within the parcel that we have an option on, that would be ideal, because that is something that would make sense in the future as the system grows in Ontario and the demand grows. I mean, there's a fivefold or threefold increase or fivefold increase in the next little while, and you're going to need a lot more of this stuff in the province.
And one more, if I may.
Go ahead, Councillor Johnson.
What would be the lifespan of this project if it didn't expand in the future?
It's a 20-year contract with the ISO, but we always plan for at least 30 years because we can participate in what's called the merchant market in Ontario, where we no longer have this revenue every month from the ISO for being available, but rather can just take electricity when it's cheaper and then put it on the grid, where we can make money when it's more expensive. So there's also the possibility of repowering it if I'm not sure how, what the landscape will look like in terms of procurement with the Ontario government in another 20 years. But we would have the ability to participate in capacity auctions or perhaps switch out some of the battery packs. But that remains to be seen.
Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair Shine. I have a couple of questions. Sorry, it's just very scary coming on the TV. With your existing project, did you have to make any modifications to the local fire services and that to address the size and the scale of what you have on site based on that proposal?
Sure, maybe I'll answer that. That's a great question.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Councillor Knowles, could you repeat that and maybe speak a little bit clearer? It was hard to
Oh.
understand what you were asking.
Yeah, no worries. I was asking about the capacity needs of the existing fire department to meet any challenges that might come with a battery site that large and with that chemical composition.
So yeah, so I was saying that's a great question. On that project that was with Haldimand County in Ontario, we worked with the county from a very early date in the permitting and planning process, and fire department was involved up front. So we, even before we applied for a building permit, let's say, we had supplied different kinds of test reports, UL ratings and certifications, and FPA ratings and certifications, and even brought the vendor of the battery into those conversations so that there's lessons learned about how to fight fires that have happened in the past. And so we did all that early with them. We developed a on-site fire response plan. The battery manufacturer, which happened to be Tesla, had their own recommended fire response plan. And then we worked with Haldimand County to come up with what their fire response plan was going to be. So ultimately, that was up to them and their fire department. But it was a collaborative approach, and we worked with them to do that. So to answer your question specifically, I'm not aware of them having to staff up or have any additional equipment or anything like any specialized equipment that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Battery fires are fairly rare. Most of the fires that have happened on utility scale projects have been with the NMC batteries, which Ines was explaining before. With the new LFP designs, these, if they do ever catch on fire, they burn up. They don't catch to the next container. All of that spacing and separation and installation requirements are very, very strong there. So it's a pretty rare event, and they got quite comfortable after having concerns in the early days, quite comfortable with their fire response plan and their ability to fight that fire.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sure the community relations part will be a big part of that as well. And a follow-up, if I may. The role of the Indigenous majority partner, how does that tie into relation to how we would operate in the community? Is there some agreements in place of staffing, or how would that relationship work? We're always trying to build Indigenous relations, and I think we want to kind of get on the ground floor of that. Thank you.
So part of the benefits would be that the First Nation would have an equity stake in the project. So we get distributions over the life of the project, but we also, in our formalized agreements, would have anything related to employment opportunities. That's something we do as a matter of course, but it would be codified in that way so that we could maximize those opportunities where appropriate. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Knowles. CAO Jason?
Question. First off, thank you for coming in person. We appreciate meeting you guys in the presentation. You had mentioned employment. Any estimates on construction versus operations for employment?
I'll give you some real numbers that were from the project that we just finished. So this project, as we said, this is an 8-hour project here at 200 megawatts. So that calculates out to 1,600 megawatt hours. The one in Haldimand County was 1,000 megawatt hours. It was 250 megawatts for 4 hours. So this one would be bigger. So the numbers that I'm telling you now was from the Oneida project, so it would be greater than that. I think we had over 300,000 employment hours on the site over a 22-month period. Trying to think of the amount. I think the peak number of people on the site at its busiest time was somewhere around 150 on any given day. Probably never less than 15 or 20. That would be rare. But those are some of the numbers. On the operations side, a project like this would probably there's the administrative operation of the project, which would probably involve about somewhere between 6 and 10 people. And then there's the operations and maintenance side, and that's like maintaining the equipment. And so that kind of technical work and electricians and such and HVAC, that would probably be, 3 to 4 additional people a year for 20 years.
And then a follow-up if I can, would admin be done on site, or is that kind of at head office, or?
It would be done at an office. Yeah, that's a good question. The projects are designed to function without anyone there. They're remotely operated. But the on-site, obviously the on-site maintenance is on-site. It's boots on the ground, and it is every day. Like a project of this size, you would actually be servicing some piece of equipment every single day of the year for 365 days. So it is a lot. There would be a couple people there, definitely at minimum, every day.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Ferguson?
Yeah, I've got a couple, because I'm familiar with the Oneida project, and you talked about the fires and the training, and one of the things that they spoke about was the training that the local fire department got was very good, because with all of the electric vehicles coming on the road, not so many now, but the electric vehicles that are coming on the road, the fire department was trained. They're brought up to speed on how to respond to an electric vehicle fire. So there was more than just firefighting or whatever at that site, but there was a benefit as more battery storage may come on cars. So there was a bigger benefit to the fire department than just that site. So sitting here, and I think nobody wants to put their hand up, what's in it for us? Why should we say yes? Like, what's good for the community? Like, where you're gonna purchase or lease a piece of land, there's gonna be some construction jobs, there's gonna be a few people working there. Is there like a community benefit agreement, or what is the role, and how is Atikokan going to benefit for the next 20 years?
That is something that can be negotiated. The tension there between in the negotiation is that this is a very competitive process, so we have to look at the financial picture as a whole for the project, and the same goes for any development fees or our stake in the project as well. Everyone who's a partner has to look at it that way, but certainly if that's something that the community is interested in, we could explore it further.
Well, we'll drop all the development fees. Well, we don't have development fees. That's why I could say we could drop them, but Atikokan doesn't charge development fees right now. So, yeah, so that's something that's, and the last one, you had a slide of that parcel of land, and you said you needed 20 acres. Just for reference sake, everything that was highlighted there is 130 acres. So they're not coming in and taking it all. There is room for expansion. There's room for maybe some other projects. So it's not that you're taking it all. We're happy to have you, and we'd like to see the room for expansion, but yeah, there's a lot more room for more projects and more things.
Councillor Johnson.
My question is, would you like to leave here today with an agreement or, because I know that time is of an essence. So are you looking for us to pass a resolution today?
That would be delightful. Yeah, we would not say no to that.
So my question is to council, are we going to pass a resolution at regular council to get this project going? Who's in favor of it?
Councillor Johnson, I have a few questions as well before we move on to that.
I'm just asking the question, who's
Yeah,
in
no,
favor?
that's why I'm going to turn it over to CAO Jason, but I think we need to finish up our question portion of it before we ask for a vote. Jason, were you going to respond to Councillor Johnson? Okay, is it okay if I go ahead with my questions first?
You're in the chair.
Well, everybody else had questions, so. As you know, there's been some development in our region in regards to the energy sector. And all of a sudden, it seemed like everything was going smoothly with the Indigenous communities, and then all of a sudden, you're hearing all these news events about not everybody is in agreement with it. Are you taking into consideration about the other communities that are directly related in our area? Are you reaching out to them is basically what I'm asking?
Yes, that's part of the permitting process. So we kind of let our First Nations partners take the lead on outreach and so on, because they're well aware of the dynamics and the best way to approach it. And as part of the permitting process, it's also an obligation part.
Okay. And then you were talking about the noise, and your information was very valuable. The area that you're choosing to develop this in does have families in that region. Will that be taken into consideration? For example, there's people that have horses, and it's not just moose and deer.
Yeah.
You know, like when you think of wildlife and the noise aspect of it. Will you be taking that into consideration as well?
So there are specific regulations about how to model the noise impacts. They take into consideration the worst case scenario, and anything that's a noise receptor, so a residential home, a cemetery, a school, it has to be considered a noise receptor, as well as sometimes the backyards and front yards and so on. So I would defer to a noise expert to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but that's my sort of understanding. Yeah.
And once your studies are completed, you would be willing to share them with us? It would be part of your project, I'm assuming? It would be made
Certainly
public
would be willing
knowledge?
to. I think it's also part of the public information that would be disseminated as well.
Okay, and then my next question is, I don't think it's directly a question for you. It's more in regards to, have we looked at the zoning aspect of this, CAO Young? And do we have to do anything in regards to this before we move ahead with this project?
Yeah.
And is the community going to be asked to speak in regards to this as well? Because that's part of the rezoning process.
So, so there's a couple hurdles to Councillor Johnson's comment. I think a blanket resolution is fine. The only concern would be applicable municipal lands. So when we did look at the lands, and we're having these conversations right now, we are actually doing some research on the lands that we own as far as size and the boundaries in that. To your question, it is currently zoned resource development, and under our current zoning bylaw, it does state existing energy generation. This isn't existing, so there would have to be a site-specific zoning amendment, and through that there is a public consultation. So because there's already existing energy generation, I don't think it's a big stretch. And then I know the lands that they're particularly looking at are far away from the residential lands to the far west of the proposed lot. So zoning-wise, I don't think there's too much of an issue there. The lands are also not currently declared surplus. So for us to even entertain any offers and all that, we would first have to declare the lands surplus. We would have to advertise them. Generally, we have like a 14-day advertising window, and then we would be able to entertain offers at that point. We are having discussions regarding timelines and moving as quickly as we can. I just spoke to our title searcher today, and they're forwarding me information. So we'll be in a better position to know what lands we have available, and then we're in communication regarding what the steps will be. But I think, to Councillor Johnson's point, you know, polling council to see if there's an appetite for such a resolution is a good move.
Councillor Councillor, got you on as a councillor. Councillor Stimson.
Thank you, Chair Shine. So what you're saying is we have people who come in and they want to use this parcel of land. We have to declare it surplus and then advertise it for sale?
Correct.
So other people could I just don't understand. We got a business who wants to buy some land, and we're throwing up red tape.
It's being clear and transparent, because I guess the question would be is what would council's answer be to another energy producer that came and said, well, we had a project that, well, that we didn't even know that you had land available. I think that advertising is just a clear and transparent process.
I would say to them, why haven't you come to us and see if there is land? You know, we got people that are here that are willing to do this. I just don't understand. I just don't understand it. I really don't. You know, we cry and cry and cry. We want development, and then when people come here, we are saying, well, we have to see if anybody else wants it first. You know, doesn't make any sense to me. Not a bit.
Ultimately, it would be council's decision. I'm just saying that historically and in past practice, that is what we've done.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Shine. I heard you mention the word Tesla. Are these modules, like are batteries Tesla? And then are you making the modules in Canada? And how is the U.S. Canada, is that going to affect the price of these things? Right?
Yeah, Tesla was the supplier for the Oneida project. We are technology agnostic, vendor agnostic, not have any sort of agreement with anyone in particular. In fact, we run request for proposal, request for pricing for every project that we do. So it could be Tesla, it could be Fluence, it could be Canadian Solar, SunGrow. There's lots of different suppliers. Most of the suppliers have offshore manufacturing now that's outside of the U.S. The Oneida project batteries actually came from Lathrop, California. So those did cross the border, you know, before all of this happened. Yeah, phew. But they were coming out of California on trucks, so that's how they came in. That was the first Megapack factory that Tesla built in California. They have now built one in Shanghai and are now developing one in Vietnam as well. So, and same with Fluence. Fluence is another large U.S. manufacturer. They have a factory in the U.S. They also have one in Vietnam, I think. So they all have offshore manufacturing where they can shift production to. So if we were to order batteries for this project today and we chose Tesla, they'd likely come out of the Shanghai facility. If we chose Fluence, they'd likely come out of Vietnam, and this is to avoid all of the mess south of us.
Thank you for that. I just have a quick question. So in regards to what Mayor Ferguson said, we have OPG here. We know what it presents to us in regards to our tax base. So any idea, like, if we go ahead with this project, would you be like providing, maybe it's more of a question for Brandy, I'm not really sure, how would we determine what the tax base would be? Like, to what benefit that is going to benefit when we're doing our budgets?
I'm not sure what the answer is to that.
Well, I can see too, though, MPAC does assess energy generation. So whatever that value would be taxed at the industrial rate. So there would be a tax benefit to the facility, yes.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
We don't know the value of that, but I mean, it would absolutely be.
But that would be come specifically, and then you would present it to us. So hopefully, like as Mayor Ferguson said, it would be of some benefit to our community to have, so when we're doing our budgets, we're not quite so scrimped. Mayor Ferguson.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. So
when you spoke about Ontario Power Generation, the Atikokan Generating Station, when Jason and I were at AMO, we had a really good meeting with Minister Lecce, Minister of Energy, his parliamentary assistant, and Kevin Holland, and we discussed the Atikokan Generating Station. And so all the energy projects that are coming to northwestern Ontario, northern Ontario, is not going to have an effect on Atikokan Generating Station. They need 75% more electricity by 2050. They think it's going to be even 80 or 85% in northern Ontario. So every megawatt counts. And one of the things that concerns me is if we would say no to this because of we don't want to affect Atikokan Generating Station, these people could go to Dryden, they could go to Fort Francis, they could go to Thunder Bay and build the same plant, and we get nothing of it, and it has the same effect on the Atikokan Generating Station. So with the Waasigan power lines coming in, we got the ability to export power. We can export power to the north, we can export power to the east. You know, my opinion, it's a great opportunity. And again, Minister Lecce said that if Ontario is going to grow and reach its potential, it's really up to the municipalities to step up and accept energy projects, because that's the only way it's going to get built. Every municipality has the right to say no to it. The Ontario government can't force Atikokan to accept this project. It's up to the municipality, but it's all up to municipalities to embrace growing of the province and of the country. So it's something that we can do to help the province, help Atikokan, and that's kind of my spiel. So there's a lot of room for a lot of energy projects, and hopefully if this goes through, there could be more. So as the guy said at NOMA, buckle up, because the next 10 years is going to be a wild ride.
Thank you for that, for Mayor Ferguson. I know I had read some article in the Thunder Bay paper, and I know Thunder Bay is going after the natural gas component of this, if I'm not mistaken, correct? That's what I read anyway.
And a lot of people are opposed to natural gas. Not to say we would never do natural gas, but a lot of other communities, counties, cities, turn down millions of dollars from Ontario Power Generation because they didn't want gas plants. This just takes electricity when there's extra, stores it, and sells it when there's a market for it.
Councillor Johnson, did you have another comment?
Thank you, Acting Mayor Shine. I think we should all of us councillors should put you on our Christmas list, number one. And what are we as a councillor going to do today to move this ahead so that these folks are going to leave here knowing that we want this?
CAO, yeah, oh, sorry.
I'm just, the next step, the ask is a blanket municipal support resolution. So the town of Atikokan supports the submission of the proposal for long-term capacity services. It doesn't say we're in favor of it, doesn't say we're all in. It says we support the submission of the proposal. So I think that is literally the least we could do is pass that resolution today. It's not very much.
A more detailed one, if helpful.
Okay, even better.
Thought we'd have that in our back pocket just in case, but didn't want to get, so is the best way to just read this, or I could share my screen?
Can I just say something before you read that? So if we have any more questions or concerns, will you be leaving an address or an email that we can reach out just so that we get the answers that we maybe need as a counselor?
Absolutely. I should have put that on the slides. My apologies for having.
Yeah, I just didn't notice it when I was reading the things, that's all.
You can funnel them through our office as well.
Okay, we can go through the CEO.
I think that's the best way. If you have questions,
put
to
it
funnel
through
them through,
CEO.
so we're not
Okay.
barraging them with questions that we go through Jason. Jason can ask the question.
Okay, Perfect.
disseminate the response. Because we might have 7 people send the same question. So if we go through one, we can all get the answers.
Are there any other questions or comments at this particular time? Oh, did I?
She was just going to share her screen for a second.
Oh, sorry, okay.
That's helpful. So, to be clear, for the blanket municipal support resolution, you can say, you can make it plural, like energy projects. So for it sort of indicates general support for these LT2 projects that may come your way, and then in terms of actually confirming that, there's the specific letter with all of the project details, right? Sort of the second step. So what we have here is the town of Atikokan supports in principle the siting of large-scale battery energy storage system projects in the town of Atikokan for submission into the Independent Electricity System Operators Long-Term Capacity Services Procurement, known as LT2 C1, C is for capacity. And City Council can delegate the authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to submit what's called a blanket municipal support confirmation letter for approval of a project. And for greater clarity, this resolution is solely for the purposes of satisfying the mandatory requirements under Section 4.2C3 of the LT2 C1 request for proposals, and does not supersede any applicable permits or approvals under applicable laws and regulations that may be required for a particular project. We added that last piece in just for clarity, so everyone's aware of the context there. So as with any project, this would undergo permitting, local permitting, and the Class EA and so on. Yeah.
I just see somebody taking a picture, so I'm just wondering, are we allowed to do that?
I don't see why not.
It's on TV, so.
Oh, I'm just, you never know about this privacy
And
stuff,
camera.
right?
Oh,
CAO Young.
Fair point. Yeah.
Just an additional comment. What I like about the proposal that you just had was it isn't specific to a specific parcel of land.
Right.
Because again, the one in the slide deck was somewhat specific, and like there was still some information that we need to iron out as far as the location. But the resolution that you're presenting now is, in a sense, it's more general, but it's specific but not general to a specific piece of property.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So those specifics would come in the confirmation letter, where we'd outline the name of the project ID if it has one, and the size, or maximum size, I should say, and location, including like the PIN. Yeah.
Right.
Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. I was having trouble seeing the screen. My eyes are getting bad. Does this resolution refer to this proposal in general, or is it meant to be a blanket proposal for any and all battery projects moving forward?
It would apply to any other battery projects, but they would not be eligible to bid in the procurement unless there was a specific confirmation letter before the bid date outlining the specific details of that project. So this does not create an obligation to approve any other battery storage project.
Okay, great. That was really my question was, yeah, if a future proposal came up, if that would be applicable to not seek council's approval or to just submit the application.
Yeah, they would still need the confirmation letter. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stimson, did you have a
I
question?
think Jimmy was first. Didn't you have your hand up to make a motion?
I'm just scratching my head.
Oh.
Oh, Councillor Stimson, did you have a
Wait,
question?
well, I guess I was waiting for Councillor Johnson to make the motion to accept that, but he never stuck his hand up quick enough. So I guess I'll move that we accept their.
Clerk Bates, or do we need a motion, or what is required?
If you guys are willing to pass this resolution, we can add it to the council meeting.
Okay. Do we add it to the council meeting, please?
So if anyone has any further questions or concerns, make sure we address them to CAO Young. I do have a kind of a different question. If someone's visiting the Toronto area, can you come and visit the site? Just like when we went ahead and visited the nuclear waste sites and things like that.
project, yes, we've done a few tours, and
So we can reach out to our CAO and then go from there to get the information on how to do it?
yeah, absolutely. We would love to arrange that. There would need to be some advance notice, of course, but we'd welcome the opportunity.
Thank you for that. CAO Young.
So for clarity then, from council, so the proposed resolution that Ines had just presented on, you're happy with that wording? If so, then I will ask you to email me that if you could, and then during the break, the clerk will look at drafting the resolution for today's council meeting. Thank you.
Wonderful.
We can clean it up so it looks a little better.
Formatting is way off.
In between. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Inez, and thank you to the other representatives here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to our third delegation, John Evans, MNP LLP, presentation for the 2022 financial statements for the town of Atikokan. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for reminding me how much I enjoy municipal politics. I haven't been to a meeting for a little while, so it was good to see a municipal decision-making in action and what it's all about. So anyways, some familiar faces here and some new faces for me. So I guess just to give you a quick introduction, my name is John Evans. I'm a partner in the MNP office in Fort Frances. We were actually a BDO office prior to this January when we were one of 23 BDO offices across the country that were part of a transaction, and we're now a new firm. So there's a bit of a transition, but we're certainly up and running full steam now, and it actually made our office in Fort Frances quite a bit stronger. We now have 28 employees, I think, including the partners, so it's been kind of refreshing to have staff again, and which is allowing us to catch up on some backlogged work, which is part of today's conversation too. So as far as questions go, feel free to ask me questions as we're going if you want, or I can take them at the end. But my intention today is to present the 22 consolidated financial statements for the town of Atikokan. We believe they're in final draft format. So just a reminder to everyone that when I get to the audit report to present that, the date that will be on the audit report, assuming that council approves them tonight, will be today. So basically, the rules say that we have to audit up to the date that those with corporate governance, so in this case it's mayor and council, approve the financial statements. So we've done enough work to be comfortable issuing our opinion based on today's date, and I'll take you through the financials, and hopefully you'll be comfortable and ready to approve them. So before I get into it, I do just want to recap a little bit of what we have accomplished this year, because I think obviously it's a little bit of a pain point, I think, for mayor and council too. But earlier this year, we issued the December 31st, 2021 financials. So that happened in this calendar year. Here today to present and hopefully finalize the 22 financials. And we've actually booked our audit fieldwork for next Monday. So I've got a team ready and available to be coming here a week today to do the 2023. So it's a big undertaking. I know, you see a set of financial statements at the end of the day, but it takes an incredible amount of work for both preparing for it, but also for us to complete the audit work. And so it's not something we can just do overnight, right? So it takes some planning, and I'm very happy that we're in a position to do the 23 audit right away as well.
Thank you for that. That was one of my questions I had, and it's good to hear that you're coming in to do the 2023. Will the 2024, it'll either be you or Brandy will let us know that they're going to be available for our next budget?
It would be as soon as possible, but obviously we need to get the 23 done first before we can book that. One of the things that's also helping is it's one of the tools that MMP has that we didn't have before. It's called SureLink, and it's like a secure online portal that we're using with Brandy. So we're finding it a lot more efficient to share information. So for example, the 23 audit, Brandy's already uploaded a lot of the information that we need. So we're doing some of the planning, some of the pre-work. We're doing that from our office in Fort Francis. And then when we come here, it makes everything a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster. And we're actually, the purpose of it is for it to be ongoing. So the 24 portal now exists, and we're constantly sharing information along the way. So something we've put in place on all of our municipal clients, and it seems to be working well. So it's just a tool, right, like everything else. But Brandy's fully on board with using it, which is sometimes one of the pushbacks we get is getting management to use it. But she's doing that, and we appreciate that. So
Thank you for that.
okay. So everybody should have a package. In your package, you should have the draft financials with you there. I'm going to go pretty quick because we're talking about 2022 numbers, right? Obviously, we want to get up to speed. History is important, and there's some important stuff to share, but you know, a lot of this is 2.5 years old, realistically, right? So if you flip to past the index, the next page is called Management's Responsibility for Financial Reporting. So just to quickly make a comment on what that is, the public sector accounting rules require this to be in your financial statements. So basically, it's a disclosure where mayor and council are signing a document saying, you understand that these financial statements are ultimately your responsibility, but you've given management the responsibility to, you know, maintain the books and records, ensure internal controls are in place, ensure that the bookkeeping's happening to be able to produce a financial statement. So that's a standard disclosure that's required as part of the financial statement, okay? Then if you turn to the next 2 pages, that's actually our report, okay? So the way this is supposed to work, and we have 13 municipalities that we take care of out of Fort Francis now, so we do a lot of municipal work. In all 13 of those all 13 of those situations, we draft the financial statements, okay? So we do that because the rules are constantly changing, the disclosure requirements are constantly changing. We have that expertise. It doesn't make sense, obviously, for management to be doing that, okay? But technically, they're your financial statements, okay? And what we're doing is we do all our work, and then as long as we're comfortable, we're giving our opinion on the financial statements. That's what we're doing, okay? So the next 2 pages is our opinion. That's the audit report, okay? And the most important section is the first section. That's our opinion. And in this case, it's what we call an unqualified opinion or a clean opinion, which is what you want, which means that I'm comfortable. We've done enough work to be able to say that the financial statements are materially correct in accordance with the public sector rules and all the disclosures are required of that. So that's what we want to see, okay? The second section, it's kind of a recap on the last page. It says, you know, management's responsible for maintaining the books and records and keeping the financial statements. The third section, the second section talks about the fact that we follow Canadian accounting and auditing standards. The third section talks about management's responsibility again. And then the entire next page talks about our role and our responsibilities as the auditor. So what we have to do in order to issue our opinion, okay? And not to get into too much of the detail, but we plan our audit, we look at where risks are, we do what's called walkthroughs to make sure we understand what's going on, and then we design our audit in all the different areas of the financial statements to get enough comfort and enough evidence to issue our opinion, okay? And so we've done that, and I'm happy to be able to say we have a clean opinion. So we're going to talk about the numbers, but to get to the end before the start is basically, it's a clean opinion on the financials, okay? Any questions? Okay, so if you turn to page 5, I'm going to spend most of my time on this page, okay? This is called the Statement of Financial Position. So the best way to explain that is if you took a picture of the municipality at a point in time, this is what's here. So these are all the assets that the municipality has. These are all the liabilities. These are the tangible capital assets that are on the books. It's everything that the municipality owns or has liability for at a point in time, which is December 31st, 2022, okay? So I'm just gonna kind of work my way down the sheet and make some comments on the different balances. Again, if you have any questions as we're going, please feel free to ask. So So to start on the first line, cash and cash equivalents, so you had about 10.5 million at the end of the year. That was a significant increase. It was up almost 4.4 million. The biggest reason for that is we had a whole bunch of capital projects that were happening in 2021, and the money for a lot of those projects rolled in 22, okay? And we didn't have a lot of capital projects happening in 22. It was kind of a quiet year on spending, and so it was one of those weird years where all the funding that hadn't been received yet came rolling in, and we didn't spend a lot. So as a result, you basically end up with more cash, okay? That cash also includes all your reserve fund savings, as well as deferred revenue. So I'm going to kind of talk to these things as I go a little bit, but some money is deferred by agreement or legislature. So the gas tax is a great example, right? You get the money, they say it's not yours until you spend it on a specific project. So again, there's another one where they've flowed the money, but you haven't spent it yet. So there was about 1.3 million at the end of 22 that was deferred gas tax money, okay? For all those reasons, cash was up in the end of the year. The next item is taxes receivable. They were up about 278,000. So that one, really the big item there was last year, 2021, there was an allowance for the White Otter property. So when the year end was completed for 2021, what management does is they go through each of the properties that have receivables, and they say, what's the likelihood of these properties getting collected, okay? And that's one of the things we need to make sure is that the value of those receivables is good. And if there's any concern that it's not going to get collected, we do what's called an allowance, okay? So in 2021, there was a significant allowance for the White Otter property. Now in 2022, that property was paid in full, okay? So that's great, that's good, but what that ended up happening is we reversed the allowance because it doesn't exist anymore. So that was the primary reason that we saw the increase there. There was some just general increases in taxes receivable in 22 from 21. I would say if I go across all our municipal clients in the north, we started to see that trend. So I jump around a little bit when I'm doing this sometimes, but one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later is your investment income was a lot higher. Interest rates went up, started to go up in 22. That's great. We got more return on our money. The flip side of that is inflation was going up, people's mortgages were going up, and you start to see the impact of that. As quickly as that happens, we often see it by virtue of seeing taxpayers paying a little bit slower, okay? No concerns, though. I said in the grand scheme of things, if I looked over a 5-year period of what your taxes receivable are compared to your tax revenue, it's running anywhere from 10 to 15%. It was a little bit higher in 22, but that was consistent with the town of Atikokan's experience in the last 5 years. Yep.
John, is that compared to other municipalities, is that a high number or?
So I guess my answer is going to be based on Northern Ontario. It really varies. I would say Atikokan's a little higher on the scale. That's
because my concern on that is because Ontario Power Generation is the biggest taxpayer and they probably pay. So when you take them out of the picture,
so those
the rest is
right.
Pretty high.
So those percentages ignore your pills. So that's just on your non like not any of the OPG or Valerie Falls or anything like that.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's to try and compare apples to apples. I typically we would take that out and just look at your kind of regular ratepayers or whatever.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay. The next item is accounts receivable. It was down about 1.376 million. Again, capital grants, right? So when you have big projects going on, often you have receivables. You had bigger receivables at the end of 21, and in 22 we realized on that. So those are in good shape. The receivables that did exist at the end of 22, 336,000 was a portion of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, the ISIP, ISIP, and that was related to the Atikokan sewage project, the ongoing project. And then there was 523,000 in the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. So again, that's money that was, in that particular case, the money was earmarked for Atikokan, and it hasn't been spent yet. So it was a receivable and a deferred revenue, which is kind of a funny situation, but we want to make sure we recognize that money. So that was included in there. And the last financial asset line there is investment in government business enterprises. So in the case of Atikokan, you have Atikokan Hydro and Atikokan Intercom, which you're 100% owners of, and they get consolidated into these financial statements. So that's what that line is all about. Atikokan Hydro in 2022 had about $135,000 surplus, and Intercom had a small surplus. Again, those are, I think everybody knows, highly regulated, rate-regulated entity, the LDC, and so typically the performance of that is based on the rate setting, approved rate setting, and what have you. So Atikokan Hydro has been accumulating a bit of a surplus in the last few years, but that's by design, by rates, and I think, you know, they have requirements for capital reinvestment of their own at the LDC level, so again, no concern. In the notes of the financial statements, there's some disclosure that provides more information on Atikokan Hydro and Intercom to kind of support those numbers or what have you. As far as the Hydro and the Intercom audits too, they're also done out of our office. I'm not the partner involved. I do have experience with Hydro LDCs, but they both, the two clients we have both moved to a partner that has more expertise in it now, and they're all up to date. So the 2024 audits and year ends are all completed for those, so that won't be any kind of an issue for the town as far as catching up. So
They were presented last meeting.
okay.
And
Let's hear. Okay, perfect. Good. Okay, so moving on to liabilities. So these are your obligations. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities are down about 47,000. Nothing really exciting to report on that. Would have included payroll accruals. There was a 2021-22 retro pay accrual in there. Vacation pay, just regular trade payables, and the other thing that would be included in there is sometimes your ratepayers prepay their taxes, so that happens a lot. So if somebody's paid more for their taxes than they owed at the end of the year, then it's actually a liability, so that's included in there. Again, very common across our municipal clients. Deferred revenue, I want to spend a little bit of time there. So there was $818,000 increase. The biggest portion of that is the gas tax. It was about 1.3 at the end of the year. There is one thing, Brandy and I do talk about this annually. You have to make sure you spend that money, right? There's a 5-year window. You'd spend a bunch of it in 2021 and in 2020, but in 2022 there wasn't any spending. That's okay. You didn't have a lot of capital projects, but I guess make sure you don't lose it, right? It's pretty broad of what you can spend it on. So yeah, just a reminder. Of course, it's 2025 now, so that's why I'm saying, well, when you get a little closer, it's one thing we're always watching for is anything that might expire, right? So the other deferred revenue was the OSIP for the year, and there was a library, like a digital, so the money had been received but hadn't spent much of it at the end of the year. It was about 200,000, so that's deferred revenue. Going to go fairly quickly on the next three. So employee benefits payable. So what the town's obligated to do is have an actuarial review, which you do about every 3 years. And there's a different firm called Dixon Actuarial. They look at all your agreements and everything else, and they come up with an estimate of what the liability is to your employees in the future when they retire. And so that's basically based on their report. They're the experts. We do look at it. We look at the inputs and the outputs to make sure it makes sense. But there was a small increase in that liability. This council has a reserve fund to cover that, and it's actually fully funded. Okay, so that is a really good thing. Not every community is in that situation. So you've actually earmarked surplus dollars and put money aside to cover up those liabilities. So I would say that's really prudent. So, okay. Landfill, that's the next one. Same kind of idea. Okay, so those rules came in about probably 15 years ago or something like that, where these rules come into play for a reason. Usually it's generally wanting mayor and council to understand future obligations, or like capital asset management plan is another not immediately directed to the financials, but again, it's that like forward thinking of what am I gonna need to replace, what am I gonna need to take care of. So the solid waste closure and post-closure, that's exactly what that is. It was a standard that said, if you have a landfill, you need to look at it, you need to look at what's it gonna cost to close it if it isn't already closed, and if it is closed, what's it gonna cost to monitor it, right? And so in your case, you've got the one closed landfill and the one open landfill, and so there's essentially a present value liability of the future cost to close and monitor that. Okay? Again, the concept of it is, should I have some money earmarked in my reserve funds to cover off those costs when they come, as opposed to just waiting and letting future taxpayers deal with it when it comes, right? Some municipalities choose not to fund it. I would say it's not great business sense, right? It doesn't mean that when the day comes you have to close it, there isn't a grant available and you're going to take advantage of that grant. That's totally fine. You can always repurpose that reserve fund, but for a different use. But at the same time, at least you have the money and it's there for that. So, yeah, that's what that's all about. However, 2023, there's a new standard that you're going to be subject to. It's called asset retirement obligations, okay? And I would have mentioned it a couple years ago. It's been coming for a while, but it's finally here. And it's the same kind of a concept. It's just going to capture a few more things, okay? So specifically, landfills used to have their own set of rules, and now they're just going to get caught by these AR rules. So it's the same concept, okay? But the other stuff that's going to get captured, and we're going to need to work with Brandy and Jason on, is there any other properties where we've got other obligations that we need to think about? Like, do we have any properties that the town owns that has, say, asbestos in them, okay? And not that you have to clean it up, but someday you're going to have to clean it up, right? So that's probably the one we're seeing the most. The other one we're seeing a little bit is if any of the town-owned properties have, say, underground fuel tanks or, you know, any kind of other liability. So we're going to need to do a little bit of an inventory on what might be out there. You already, I would say, have a decent inventory because of your capital asset management plan, because of something called contaminated sites, which is another standard that we have to follow now. This is like another one, but they're all interconnected. And it's not something that you're going to have to go out and get a bunch of studies on or anything like that. We can help guide Brandy on determining what some of those liabilities might be, okay? But certainly if you have buildings with asbestos in them, that's kind of like a low-hanging fruit on one we anticipate seeing, okay? So yeah, that's one thing I didn't mention. I don't think we have, the other one that's kind of a weird one, and I haven't seen them in any of our municipalities, is x-ray machines. Like, I don't think we see that here as one that came up, very odd. Or any other contaminated site. So a contaminated site, though, that's in active use is one we might need to take a little bit closer look at. So if you have, say, Public Works and it had, you know, an underground fuel tank at it, under the old standards, we just would say, I'm not worried about it, it's in active use. Under the ARO standards, we've got to take a little bit closer look and say, okay, is there anything there that we need to think about? Okay, so just wanted to mention that. That's going to be something that we'll talk about when we come back for 23. So, long-term debt, there was no new debt. This in 2022, you paid down your principal of $725,000 on schedule. Basically, the three loans, one was from the Arena Willow Road project, one was from the some sewer work, and there was one other that was later sewer work, I think. So there was, is that right? Yeah, sewage plant. Sorry, it's CMHC, it was Main Street, the Willow Road and the Rec Center, and then the sewage plant. So those three loans continue to be outstanding, and in 2022, you paid them on schedule. So that brings us to the kind of a little more than halfway down the page to net financial assets. So I just want to comment on that. So you can see your net financial assets are $8,317,000. That means you have positive cash. I mean, it's a little bit skewed because that number includes hydro and intercom, which is almost $5 million, right? But the important part here, I think, is that if you cashed out all your investments and paid all your liabilities, you would have money in the bank. That's kind of like the simplest way to think of it. There are certainly municipalities that have net financial debt, which means they can't do that. Usually the question that comes after I say that is, well, what's the right number, John? Like, how much should we have? And I don't know what the answer is to that. I think the answer, though, is usually ties back to reserve funds, usually ties back, and then somebody usually will say, well, how many reserve funds do I need? That comes back to what are your plans, right? And so when we talk about kind of the full circle, the asset management plan and like what's happening in the future, I think it all ties in well to making sure we have money in reserves and reserving appropriately, right? But anyways, with all that being said, I think it's good that you have a positive net financial asset position, because it means that you have some excess funds ready for projects. That's usually the biggest thing, right? We've also seen municipalities where a project comes along and maybe it's going to be 20% municipal funded and 80% provincially funded, and they can't do it because they don't have the money to do that. So I do think that it is important to have some reserves just ready for capital projects, because funding is always changing, right? So, okay. Any questions? I'm spending most of my time on this page, so don't worry, we won't be here all night. Okay, so the bottom of the page is what we call our non-financial assets. So that's your buildings, your roads, your sewer, your water, your brick and mortar. You can see the tangible capital assets actually went down from 21 to 22 by almost 1.2 million. That's going to happen, okay? In a year when you are spending money and investing in big projects, I expect that number to go up. And then when you're amortizing it, meaning we're recognizing that the building's getting older, we're going to see that number go down. So we didn't have a lot of capital in 2022, and so to see that go down was not a crazy thing. It's what it is. You did do some capital spending, about 570 grand in 2022, 80 grand at the water plant, about 270 grand on various linear assets, water, sewer, 27,000 in computers. There was a vehicle for 52 and about 20 grand on the library collection. So there's always some kind of capital, but I would say it was a quiet year, 22. Okay. The last items are prepaid expenses. It was up a little bit this year. Actually, the biggest piece of that, so that's usually like prepaid computer programs for the year, like support for the year, stuff like that. I think what happened this year is a bunch of this audiovisual equipment actually got paid for before it landed, which is, again, normal, so that was just a prepaid this year. That made up a chunk of it. And then inventories of supplies, that's fuel at the airport, a little bit of water and sewer, supplies or what have you, and then crush material, typically, so no real changes there to talk about. Okay, so next page is called the Statement of Operations. So what happened during the year, and again, a little bit higher level here, but I'm going to run through it pretty quick. So the first line is taxation, so that would be everything from regular taxes and your pills, so that's your Valerie Falls and the OPG. One point I do always like to mention, just because it's so significant in the case of Atikokan, and I know everybody knows this, but it makes up 44% of your tax base. So it's awesome when it's there. Right, so I mean, we talked a little bit about reserves. It wasn't that long ago when we had our reassessment and had to borrow a bunch of money to pay back some of those tax changes. So, whether you need a battle chest to plan for that or not, I can't tell you that, but certainly I think the important part is that it is 44% of your tax base. So, and coming from a town that used to have a big blue box with smoke coming out of it, we do know that things change. So anyways. For now, that's awesome, and it's very significant. Taxes were up about 220,000. There was a small amount of assessment change, some subs and omits that happened, but really, honestly, nothing like too crazy to comment on there. The next two lines are federal and provincial grants. Again, there was less capital happening, so there's less grants. Those items in particular are just going to change based on what's happening, what funding's available, what projects are on the go, and there was just a little bit less happening in that year. The provincial grant included your OMPF for about 1,657,000. We did use some of the ISIP money. It was on the sewer project. About 184 was the federal portion, and 153 was the provincial portion. Moving on down, we have user fees and charges there, so they were down about 82,000.
Just
Yep.
one moment, Councilor
Go ahead,
Johnson.
Could you, because of my ignorance, could you tell me what user fees and service charges are?
Like, what's it made up of?
Yeah.
Yep, so that would be water and sewer, would be the primary ones. Marriage licenses, dog licenses.
Tipping fees included in that?
What's that?
Is tipping fees at the garbage dump?
Yes, they would
Okay.
be included in there, I think. Give me 1 second. Yes, they would be, sorry. And marriage fees and some of those things are included in other income, not in user fees, but. The biggest reason for the decrease there was fuel sales at the airport. So that usually, I think typically it's how many fires you have and how much fuel is being sold to the M&R, right? And there was just less of it that year. So that was the primary reason for the reduction. Municipal grants, that's the POA, so that's provincial offenses. That was across the board. Every municipality saw a reduction in 2022. There was less fines, less collections, so there's less of a piece for Atikokan. Income from government enterprises, we talked about that. That's Hydro and Enercom, so it increased by 150,000 this year. That was the surplus between the two of them. And then lastly was other income. It was up 304,000. The biggest thing there was interest. Okay, so as I mentioned before, interest rates increased significantly in 2022. So that made up 127,000 of that increase. And then you had a whole bunch of land sales in 2022 as well. So that was 140,000 versus about 5 the year before. So that's on the revenue side. On the expense side, it was down about 305,000. I like so how we have to report it in the financial statements is by function, I think they call it. So I don't find that as useful. Okay, so the other way we present it is by what's called by object. So if you flip to page 24, there's a note there, note 14. It's got expenses by object. Okay, so I just think it's actually just a different look at the same thing. So we just group the different expenses by salaries and wages, materials, contracted services, versus if you're looking at page 6, it's grouping it by general government protection. So it's the same expenses, just putting it a different way. I find note 14 to be a little bit more telling. Okay, and I don't really have any specific comments to make year over year. On anything there. I just wanted to mention that that's another way to look at that. Okay. So if we go back to page 6, I guess what we want to say at the end of the day is that we had a current year surplus of 2.3 million, okay? And we started the year with almost 61 million in surplus and ended the year with 63,302,000. That's a really big number, right? So what I like to do is, again, if you turn to page 22, note 10, I'll give you a minute to jump there. So what this note does is it basically breaks down that 63 million, right? So the first part of the note is capital assets, okay? So of that 63 million, you got 54 million of stuff, okay? And there's 4.6 million of long-term debt that's related to that stuff. So we haven't paid for it yet. So at the end of the day, we've got $50 million of paid for stuff. Okay, so that's 50 million of 63, and that's a big portion of your surplus. Okay, I'm going to skip over the current surplus and come back to it for a minute. Okay, the next section down is called other allocated deficits. Okay, and the reason it's separated is because the intention of those things is for them to be funded with reserves. So, Rob, we talked about that before, the landfill closure, the employee future costs, those are the deficits that are related to those accruals, but we also have, in your case, reserve funds to offset them, which is good. That's why we separate them. And then the bottom section, other than investment in government business enterprises, is your reserve funds and your reserves. So that's money you've earmarked for whatever purposes, right? Future capital projects, employee feature benefits, medical building, whatever it is, okay? And then the last item is your investment in the hydro, okay? And so that kind of breaks down what that $63 million is all about. The one thing I do want to put a little bit of highlight on is the general operating surplus of 4.9 million. That's a big number, okay? We're seeing more and more of this in all the municipalities and in all the things. Is I think there's a delay in formally earmarking those dollars as reserves, okay? So that's just part of the municipal surplus, okay? And what part of being caught up too, right, is Brandy knows, council knows what's that number, and now we use that number to say, okay, of that 4.9 million, I need to put aside 4.5 million in a reserve for whatever, right? Capital projects, OPG assessment, risk, whatever you want to do, okay? So right now though, it's just sitting in general surplus because it hasn't specifically been earmarked yet. I'm sure everybody at this table has an idea for what you can do with that money. It just, we haven't specifically done that yet, okay? And this is where it was at in 2022. 2023, any budgeted reserves will still impact that, and 2024 budgeted transfers will impact that. So once we get caught up, you're gonna have a better idea of what that is. It's not a problem, it just, an educated user that's looking at the financial statements would say, why do you have $5 million of operating surplus? You should earmark that for whatever use it should be. That's all, okay? Again, to be honest, it's something we're seeing in a lot of the municipalities, just because if they're behind a little bit, or just it's more complicated to budget when we got away from cash accounting. So like way back in the day, it was easy. I'm gonna go get this much revenue from my taxpayers. This is what I'm gonna spend on all my stuff. This is what I'm gonna put in reserve. And at the end of the day, it should be zero. And at the end of the year, if you had a surplus or a deficit, council will decide, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go get it from next year's taxpayers to cover our deficit, or are we gonna put that money in a reserve? It's a little bit delayed now, just because of how there's so many moving parts of the financials with the new rules now. So I think there's a little bit of wait and see on that. We got to see what's going on. But Brandy and I said before, we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of working on that compared to your budgets you spent, and I'll speak back to it when I come back to the 2023.
So John, not knowing because we're not caught up, could we invest that money and as we get caught up and then find out where we're at? Because like, is it sitting there doing nothing?
No, it's part of your, like, all your money is really generally together anyways, and it's earning interest. You earn interest on your savings. So it doesn't matter if it's earmarked or not, it's still earning money. Yeah. It's really more just kind of a formalization saying like, yeah, we have some money that we haven't said we have a specific use for, and we want to do that. Because otherwise, as a taxpayer, I would say, well, maybe my tax rate shouldn't be going up.
Yeah,
that's all.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we know that there's projects, there's costs, there's obligations. It's just a matter of formalizing it a little bit. So, okay.
Great.
So yeah, the rest of the financial statements really support what I talked about. Like if you go through each of the notes just gives more information to one of the 2 pages I spoke to. And to be honest, I spoke to a lot of it as we go, so I wasn't going to go page by page through each one, but certainly can take any questions, and otherwise, I believe they're in final format, and look for some to approve them so we can get into 2023.
Sorry. Councillor Stimson.
Yeah. Yes, I just got one question. When you were talking about the income from government business enterprises, you said something about provincial offenses?
So that is the line municipal grants. So if you look on page 6, So provincial offenses, all the money from the fines and whatever that happen, in your case of Atikokan goes to Fort Frances, they're the host municipality, right? And so they collect all that money and then they distribute it once a quarter, once a year, based on each.
So it comes back to town?
Comes back.
Oh, good.
Exactly.
Good, okay, just
It's just,
money to come back.
in '22, there wasn't much going on, to be honest, yeah.
Well, I just
So you didn't
was
get.
wondering why when you pay a fine, it goes to Fort Francis. But now you explained it, they deal it back. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, they're the host municipality. So in each district, there's usually one host municipality, and they, like Dryden, City of Dryden is the Dryden one. Thunder Bay is Thunder Bay. So yeah, they basically operate the POA system and pay it out to the municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
But can you, I know it's not part of this, but can you explain that, like, is it dollar for dollar? Like, we get $100 fine in Atikokan, we get that money back, or is it a percentage of that money we get back? Because there must be administration costs and things.
There is.
I don't think we get dollar for dollar.
No. It would be net of, so I haven't looked at the POA for a little bit, so yeah. But all that money comes in, whatever costs are there to operate the POA system. So there'd be like, there's one person, there's a salary, they get an audit, we do an audit for them once a year, there's software costs, all that stuff. And then whatever's left over, the profit, gets split up and distributed across the municipalities. I think the unique part is, if somebody pays a fine in Fort Frances, but it's for a Canora fine, that's not part of the same district, and so there's some money that gets flipped around that way. But whatever's left essentially gets distributed out to the municipalities in the group, and I can't recall if it's based, what allocation it's based on. It might be the same as the DSAB allocation, but I'd have to look. Yeah, some allocation.
On a per capita thing then?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Are there any other questions? Mayor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Shine. Through the chair, John, could we be, I know it sounds like a huge number if we had $5 million. Could we be seen, in your opinion, by the province, and maybe Jason can help out, when we apply for funding, could they say, you don't need our funding, you can fund your own stuff?
I've never seen that.
No?
No.
Okay.
I think it'd be the opposite. It would be more likely for them to say, if you don't have the money to do the project, and so you're not going to be able to qualify because you haven't earmarked for specific purposes. Yeah, I've never seen that. Yeah, but I do think it's just a good practice to say, you know, we're going to earmark the money for whatever purpose. And other thing I always tell council is, the Municipal Act says very clearly, if you earmark something for A, and you can make it pretty broad, like capital projects, right? And you decide, you know, a couple years from now that capital project doesn't make sense, or you want to do something, as long as the majority of council makes a decision, you can repurpose the money, right? So it's not, the only ones that are kind of locked in are like the gas tax is legislated to be reserved, and it has to be kept in a separate account, so it's really way more specific. Almost all of their funds are pretty wide open. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair Shine. Just wondering, are other communities in the same boat as us? You're doing the financials now for 2022. Is that typical in government?
Atikokan's behind, so you're not, even in our municipal group, you're not the only one that's behind. I would say, I don't know what it is, but COVID was probably part of it, to be honest. A lot of places fell behind. Of our 13 municipal clients, there'll be at least 3, maybe 4 that are working on 23 right now. So it's, yeah, not completely unusual. Certainly not the goal, and not what you want either, right? So, yeah.
Any other questions? So what do you require from us?
So I think if what typically happens is somebody will put forward the suggestion for approval of the financial statements, and if council approves them, then we'll get you everything in writing this week. and it'll be finalized. We've already provided. We also do what's called the financial information return. So that's like the MMAH's format of. We do the financial portion of that, and the 22 has already been submitted by Brandy, so that's already happened. The audit can be finished and released this week. We've got what's called a representation letter. So Brandy and Jason will sign a letter saying, "Hey, I didn't hide anything from you, John. You know, all the information you needed was provided." It's a standard audit procedure. We'll send the financials, and Mayor and Council will sign the financials just as formal approval after today's approval. And then the set of journal entries that Brandy will sign. We sometimes do what's called a management letter too, okay? And that means, like, if we find something in the audit that, yeah, it didn't impact our opinion, but we want to bring it to your attention, we'll do that. We didn't have anything, so we'll probably issue what's called a no issues management letter. So it's like, hey, we didn't find anything. Like I said, at the end of the day, yes, we're behind, but the work that's being provided to us and the evidence that's being provided is all there. And, you know, leaning on Brandy to use this new tool we have to do a lot of it online, it's really helping. So I appreciate that everything is in good order. We just need to work together to get caught up, which is what we're doing right now, right? So 2023, I'd like to see get turned out, like it needs to be done and out, and probably by the end of November. That would be a realistic goal. By the end of November would be a realistic goal. Yeah. So the team will come here. They'll spend the week here doing their field work. When they're done that, there's still documentation and evidence that has to happen, and we have other audits, so that's just what holds it up. But that would be realistic, would be for that. So that's the plan for 23, and we'll look at 24 at the same time for scheduling it. So
Thank you for that, John. The resolution will be in our regular council meeting to follow.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to sneak out here. Thank you.
Welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Moving on to item 4, Administration and Employee Relations, the CEO update. CEO Jason?
So as council had directed over the summer months that they were looking for general updates from the departments, and it was determined and suggested that it all fall under one report. So what we've done is we've kind of gathered the highlights from each department. It is not an exhausted list, but we feel it is the ones that probably are top of mind. So you've had time to review it. Myself or any department heads are here to answer any follow-up questions that you might have. Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, sorry, who had their hand up first? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Shine. I think I've asked Tyler this question again. I forget the answer. I'm sorry. Do we expect O'Brien to be completed to the extent of the project?
Yeah, substantial completion still scheduled for this year.
Thank you.
Council.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Just while we're on, what is deemed to be substantial completion?
Under the Act, the project is substantially complete in that it can be used how it was designed to be used, essentially. So water main and road paved, probably some restoration on the side still.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you when they came to turn my water back on, they said it was going to be paved. The first coat of pavement was supposed to be on it before they leave for the winter. Okay, Councillor Lyons, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Shine. With regards to the report that CAO Young provided, I do have just a couple of questions. The first with regard to staffing shortages and recruitment. And I was just wondering, with the key positions that are currently vacant, and some of them are currently posted, have we engaged any sort of headhunters or external recruitment in order to support trying to get those positions filled?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
We have not previously utilized those sorts of HR services to recruit. Currently, The list of current vacancies, obviously, right now, we're still trying to recruit a deputy clerk. That position remains unfilled. We are starting some succession planning in regards to fire, building, and bylaw. And there is a handful of positions at Public Works still in regards to operators, sewer truck operators, a couple laborers ongoing as well. We will be seasonally advertising right away for our after-school program. We'll be advertising right away for our casual arena attendance, and then the junior rink attendance as well. And then, of course, as winter progresses, we will be looking at our student hirings for the ski hill as well, which is done through with the high school.
Okay, is there any appetite for possibly looking at, I'm thinking of the deputy clerk position or even some of the public works positions, and, with succession planning in the future, recruiting for those, the key departmental positions. Is there any appetite for looking at external recruitment?
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, there's a cost to that, but we would absolutely, we could investigate those options, bring them back to council, yep.
Okay. And if I may, Chair Shine, I just have two more. The next one is with regards to the fire truck procurement. I understand that a committee has been put together to source potential vendors for that. Do we have a timeline for when we are hoping to select the model and features and such, and when we can anticipate ordering?
Thanks for the question. The trucks currently take 2 years to build.
Yeah.
So if I ordered one today, and we'd get it in 2027, 2028. There are the odd company, there's the companies here and there that just build them and push them out the door. We had 2 that were available in the United States that I have got details for. We were reviewing them. They sold just like that. It's a very, very tight market right now for securing an actual truck. So what's going to end up happening is the vendors, that I have a number of them, I met with 3 vendors last week in Thunder Bay. If we find one that is suitable for the needs of the community, it will be an immediate approach to council to say, procurement policy is to tender something of that value. However, in this case, being a unique item, it's here, will council approve the purchase? And that's really the only way I can go about it, or order one and wait another 2 years.
Certainly. I'll try and reframe my question. With the vendor review committee, do you have an anticipated deadline on making that decision of when to go ahead with whatever approach you decide?
We already have a decision to go ahead with the type of truck. It's
okay.
Not a vendor. We're not choosing a vendor. We're looking at, does the truck match the needs of the community?
Okay. Thank you.
Is that all your questions?
I just had one. One for Tyler. With the patching contract being over budget, I was just wondering, how are we approaching the RFQs for these? Are we putting them out, say, at the beginning of a year, or are we looking forward at multi-year bundling or any sort of cost savings to make the project itself more enticing for our...
Yeah, so this one we tried to make it more enticing. We packaged it into the planned Mackenzie Avenue project. Unfortunately, that one came in substantially higher than we were thinking, so that went out. So we approached anybody in the area who generally does paving, like there's only a handful of contractors, right? And then we also posted with the Construction Association of Thunder Bay.
Okay, with that, are we looking towards future years for patching at this time?
No.
No? Okay.
It changes too much every year in terms of patching quantities, where we're going.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if we had a plan for any sort of rehab work for the next 3 years.
It'll line up with all the water main rehab work we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Knowles?
Thank you, Chair Shine. Jason, I'm happy to provide the name of a couple of companies that I've used previously and found great success in in that HR headhunting role that are pretty cost effective. So happy to flip that to you. My question is, this is the first time we're kind of seeing this new format of reporting. How have you found it in terms of relaying the information? To be honest, I'm actually preferring this method, and I find it's a lot easier to gather everything together.
Yeah, I think for administration, it was fine. I think the challenge is just trying to make sure that we're hitting the areas that are top of mind for council, right? So for us, there might be something that we've overlooked or we haven't thought as important, and obviously, in council. So as long as we're getting, kind of the questions from council or any sort of feedback, that's great. Then we can, and if council as a whole is happy with the system, then we most certainly can continue on. We are looking for feedback, and like I said, if there's any specific topics that we're missing, let me know, and we'll do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Stimson?
Thank you, Chair Shine. I got two questions. One for Graham, or maybe one for Jason, I guess. It's about Graham saying that, or Fire Chief Warburton saying that, the last two trucks just went like that, and that if he found one that's acceptable, he'd come back to council. Is there any way that we can do that vote by email instead of having to get a date that everybody can attend to give approval? We do that for other boards I'm on. We do an email out, and you in favor or not of buying this fire truck, and you send back your answer.
Generally, now that we're back onto our 2-week regular schedule, and I'm looking to Fire Chief Warburton, I don't think that we would necessarily lose it in a 2-week window. I mean, if there was one that fit the needs, it would be, look at, what, we want this truck, put a hold on it. We obviously need a resolution to pull that money from reserves. If it was absolutely in the sense, if he found the perfect truck and we were going to lose it, then absolutely we would do something to make sure we didn't.
Because it seems like they go on the market and they go off the market pretty quick by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
And the second question, I guess, would be to Public Works Director. Tyler, now that I see and hear that we gravel the road going into Lerome Lake and that, is that now our responsibility to plow it in the wintertime?
We didn't gravel it. The contractor building the road has finished putting the gravel in and grading and
okay.
All the road work. A couple sets of guide rails. I will defer any questions regarding maintenance to CAO.
Yeah, and there's a report to council regarding Lerome Lake, so we can speak to that.
Yeah, I see that, but I just wondered about having a look after. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson?
Jason, you were looking for feedback, and I totally like this idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like this.
Any other questions? I have one for Graham. Are we moving ahead with any demolitions, or is that going to be held off till 2026?
No, we will be moving ahead with demolitions this year.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Stimson?
Just one thing. Thank you, Jason. This is, like Councillor Johnson said, this is exactly what we are looking for, and I know you're busy, but you put this together, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Ferguson?
Through the chair, I just like to echo what Councillor Johnson and Councillor Stimson said. This is what we were looking for. Again, this is the first blush at it, so I'm sure that it'll get more succinct and get more information. But yeah, I think for the first go at it, I think this is exactly what we're looking for.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. I do want to say it was nice to be able to finally give an answer to everybody asking, what are those big weight trucks in town with those big hoses coming out the back? Everybody wants to know what they are. But anyway, thank you for that. Moving on to the next item. Fire and Property, the Lerome Lake Phase 2 Extension Request Support. Report to Council. CAO Young.
As everyone remembers, the Lerome Lake project has been ongoing for many, many years. We have worked extensively with the developer over the last 2 years, 3 years to try and get Phase 2 done. And our former solicitor, Larry Eustace did a lot of work with them in regards to the legal side of it. We're happy to report that the current extension, so the current extension is ending on October 9th. We're happy to report that the developer has fulfilled all the obligations with the ministry to fulfill his obligations for the release of land for phase 2. The challenge becomes, and they're down to the wire, is just they were concerned with the registering of the plan, if they were going to hit the deadline, and they were concerned, they didn't want to risk the expiration. They did reach out to the ministry, and the ministry even suggested a 6-month extension for them. They will be done before that, obviously, which is great. It's moving forward. So I think just for ease of mind for the developer, they had asked for a resolution of council supporting the extension, very similar to the one that we did, I believe, in 2023. Happy to report, and again, kudos to Tyler for the work with the developer on phase 2 of the road. So there was a lot of work that had to be done. That was one of the kind of the hangups regarding phase 2. The last portion was the town being satisfied with the condition of phase 2 road before we would accept that. I'm happy to report that the developer did a lot of work on our kind of pushing them forward to do that. We're quite pleased with the end result. What will happen, similar to phase 1, is the land on the road will become the town of Atikokan roadway. But the agreements specifically state that we will not maintain that road to whatever level that council decides at that time until all 28 lots are sold. So there's the 15 lots from phase 2. They still need to be sold, and at that point, we will have a plan in place to how we will deal with that. We make sure early on that everyone understands that there is no guarantee it will be plowed all winter. It'll be graded. We're pretty open to what that will be. So we make that known, and it's in the developer agreements as well. Having said that, if we have 28 lots sold and being built, that's a significant source of tax revenue, and as such, we have to provide a level of service for them. So we will have a plan in place to maintain that road. So happy to report that they're almost there. There's been some good stuff going, and I believe the developer will be in a position to be able to start selling lots on phase 2, whether it be over the winter or the spring. So we're just looking for a resolution supporting their extension request.
Are there any questions for CEO Young? And I believe the resolution will come in on our regular council meeting, which happens next.
Correct.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Shine. Jason. CAO Jason Young. Sorry.
Okay.
Formalities. So is this like garbage pickup and these sort of things too? Is that going to be enter into the equation later on? I haven't seen the agreement, so.
Yeah, so it mainly speaks to road maintenance. We do offer tokens for landowners out there, so the garbage is kind of, so whether that changes between now and then, I mean, there's different opportunities, but it's specific about the road maintenance. Yeah.
No further questions? Okay, we'll adjourn this meeting at 6:52, and we'll take
7 o'clock.
Oh, we'll re-adjourn at 7 o'clock for the regular council meeting. Thank you, everyone.